and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spoonhour. And on behalf of PlanRVA, we wish to extend our great appreciation across the region to all of the veterans that serve in our communities. We thank those who serve in these 9 localities, of course, across the nation, but specifically in these 9 localities in which we represent. Please send our very best to all of your veterans, as I know you're all very thankful and grateful for their service in your localities. With that, Mrs. Firestone, I'm going to ask that you call the roll and certify if we do indeed have a quorum. I do want to make one announcement. Zoom has done some updates. We think we're okay. It's not our issue, but Sid is working very, very diligently and to let us know that everything's good to go online. But Zoom did do an update which caused some issues with audio. But Sid's been handling it masterfully. We just wanted to let you know that for those online, we may have some audio. And then lastly, we have these microphones. It may be a little burdensome, but as you speak, someone may hand you a microphone, and that's because we're going to need you to have those there. And Mr. Gregory, before we go any further, I do need these 2 doors open for public meeting. Is there any way we can? No, that's fine. Thank you. Yep. Got it. We meet the requirements with 1 door? I think so. Okay. On the advice of council, we'll have this door open. Thank you. Ms. Firestone.
Thank you. Town of Ashland, Dr. McGraw. Miss Abbott. Mr. Chambers. Charles City County, Mr. Atkins.
Present.
Chesterfield County, Mr. Winslow.
Here.
Mr. Holland. Mr. Carroll.
Here.
Miss Carroll. Mr. Engel.
Here.
Miss Fry. Mr. Davy. Goochland County, Mr. Spoonhour.
Here.
Hanover County Chair Davis.
Present.
Mr. Peterson. Miss Pritchard. Mr. Whitaker.
Here.
Mr. Waddell.
Present.
Henrico County, Reverend Nelson. Miss O'Bannon. Mr. Thornton. Miss Thornton. Mr. Baca.
Here.
Thank you. New Kent County, Miss Page. Mr. Lockwood. Miss Pearson.
Here.
Thank you. Powhatan County, Vice Chair Byerly.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. McClung. Mr. Hall. City of Richmond, Dr. Newbill.
Here.
Mr. Addison. Miss Lambert. Miss Lynch. Miss Robertson. Mr. Poole. And Mr. Giovia. Thank you. That concludes the roll call for attendance, and we do have a quorum.
Let the record reflect that we do have a quorum. The next item on the agenda are public comments. Public comments are time for anyone who wishes to address the commission to come forward. We ask that you state your name or the entity that you represent. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to make comments to the commission? Anyone at all? Ms. Firestone, do we have any submitted comments to be read?
We do not.
Hearing none, we will now close public comment time. The next item on the agenda is a consent agenda. Have all board members had an opportunity to review the consent agenda? Are there any amendments? Very well. Is there a motion to approve? We have a motion and we have a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Approval of the October 13th, 2022 minutes. Have all commission members had an opportunity to review the minutes? Are there any requested corrections? Is there a motion to approve? We have a motion by Dr. Newbill. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Spoonhour. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Let the record reflect that Mr. Carroll is abstaining from that vote.
Also, Byron Atkins.
Let the record reflect that Mr. Jackson abstained from that vote as well. And Mr. Whitaker is abstaining.
Okay.
Any other abstentions? Very well. Thank you, gentlemen. Next item on the agenda is standing committee reports, executive committee and chairman's report. I'll be brief on executive committee and chairman. We've talked about a number of different things. Ms. Heater is going to go into some details. Obviously still working with the new building, and that is going phenomenally well. I think Ms. Heater has been issued a hard hat and a vest. She's down there so often, which is great because our timeline is we're ahead of schedule. And I think a lot of that's due to Martha and her team working closely and being a de facto project manager. The executive committee discussed a few things. We don't have a full recommendation to bring forward to the commission, but with regard to the work schedule and how a flex work schedule is going to be for the new building and for staff and what that might look like. There was a discussion. I won't say it was robust, but it was certainly detailed. But I believe that any discussion points that are brought from the executive committee may not necessarily come with an endorsement, but we do want to give you some ideas on what maybe a consensus was as we developed this a little bit more. But that has been some discussion amongst the executive committee, and with all respect to those who contacted me outside of our normal meetings on what commissioners would like to see as far as a planned work schedule for our staff. We've taken all that into account, and I've met with Ms. Heater, and again, the executive committee spoke on that. We're going to talk about facilities. We're going to talk about public outreach. I'm going to turn most of this over to Ms. Heater to give an update. But with that, is there anything that anyone would like to have added to this agenda in any of those discussions? Does that suffice? I know work schedule was something. Is it okay? Just a consensus that the executive committee is still working on that to bring back a recommendation? Anybody want to add? Okay, thank you. We'll certainly have a full commission discussion on that when the time comes. So thank you. I have nothing else, Ms. Heater. I'm going to turn it over, I guess, audit facilities to Mr. Holland and Mr. Van Dorn. So thank you, sir. Good morning.
Thank you. The Finance Committee will be meeting very soon to review the audit results and discuss them and make a recommendation accordingly. And of course, I'm gonna ask Ms. Heath to share information relative, as she mentioned, relative to some, hopefully our new space update on the agenda. Ms. Heath, would you care to
Thank
share?
you. Yes, Mr. Holland, thank you. I appreciate
We'll
that.
smile.
Did want to let everyone know that we did finish the office decommission at Stony Point on 10/31. I wanted to just say special thanks and recognition to Lee Medford on our team and Mark Bittner, who many staff helped along the way, but those two really were kind of chief in making sure that all of the pieces and parts got removed from the Stony Point location and were relocated to the Whole Street location. So couldn't have done that without their work. We are on schedule. If not, actually, we are ahead of schedule. I was able to share with Mr. Holland this morning. Our project status team meeting yesterday released a new project schedule that has a certificate of occupancy scheduled for confirmation with the city on 11/23, which is the Wednesday before the Thanksgiving holiday. So we're really pleased about that. The game plan is to have our final punch list walkthrough on Monday, the 21st. I and some other members of our staff, Mark and Lee, probably most significantly, will do that walkthrough with our project manager, the architect, and the construction lead to go through and make sure that we've got everything according to plan and as it should be. Then on the 23rd, we're scheduled for that CO to be final walkthrough with the city and final issuance to occur. Monday, the 28th will be the first day that we'll be releasing our vendors to assist in actually setting up the office. So Creative will be coming in that week to install the workstations in the perimeter of the workspace area. Proxios will be coming in to install the network equipment so that we are up and live, connected to the internet and the rest of the world. And our movers will be relocating all of our belongings and furniture from the second floor up to the third during that week as well. The idea is that we'd be able to invite our staff back in starting Monday, the 5th, to be able to come to the office according to how their schedules look so that they can unpack their belongings, get their workstation set up, workspaces set up, and start to get a feel for the office. So we've got a couple of tours set up this month to be able to help prepare staff for, the basics like knowing how to navigate the building, parking, all that kind of good stuff. And I think everybody is really starting to get excited about this. So I did want to share, and we talked a little bit about this at the executive committee, this experience of being remote for this month, particularly in hosting in-person meetings offsite, has been quite the experience. Just wanted to commend Janice and Sid and many others. Gilbreth, I know, has been a part of that as well. Ken Leantz, to be able to be the support team that's making all these meetings happen. It is not easy to come into different surroundings and kind of figure out system. I mean, everybody assumes that things work the same, but Sid has already been putting a plug in for some new technology he'd like to see in our space based on what he's observed from other folks' systems. So I'm nodding, I'm clocking that, Sid. But I just wanted to say thanks to all of you guys for what you've done, and just share that it has definitely been a team effort, but a Herculean feat on the folks who's been working on this. And it has shown me that our new space is going to be, I think, highly desirable, because there are not a lot of options around the community for large rooms that have the technology. And we're so grateful today for the Community Foundation for hosting us, because it's a unique resource to have in the community. So thank you for that. Did want to just also share too that the executive committee will be working on a bit more structure. We have a great opportunity in the new space to think, I think, more progressively and more with the times, so to speak, as it relates to security. So more to come on that, but we will be working to have hopefully detailed instructions for each of you, so that when you do come to the first meeting in our new space, you will feel adequately equipped to be able to not only navigate the neighborhood, find the parking that's dedicated for our office space, but be able to maneuver around and through the building appropriately. So more to come on that. It's going to take us a little bit just to be able to get ourselves acclimated, but we do have, I think, some great ideas in the works to be able to make sure that that orientation is as seamless as it possibly can be. So let me see, Mr. Holland, did you
I'm
have
done.
anything else?
I don't have anything else. I'll
Okay.
ask for questions. And Ms. Heater, thank you for sharing that update. And again, the Finance Committee, as I mentioned, will be meeting around the 17th to look at results, audit results, and share it with the Executive Committee and the Commission appropriately our financial condition, which is still very good. Let me just say, very
Okay,
good.
well, thank you. Any questions or comments, Chairman Holland, the Finance Committee? Yes, sir. Ms. Peterson.
December 17th. I'm sorry, that date isn't registering with me. Is it? Oh, November 17th.
November.
Oh,
November
apologies.
17th.
So yeah, thank you. Sorry. November 17th, we will be at 424 Hull, but I think we'll be on the 6th floor. That's what we're working to book the 6th floor, because the sound was a little bit hard.
Thank you. No other comments, Mr. Chairman? Go back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ms. Heater, you want to introduce item C, public outreach?
Yeah, I think in Mr. Davies' absence, Mr. Spoonhauer and I will kind of, I hope you'll correct me when I step beyond what I'm supposed to be reporting, but I'll take a stab at doing a report of where things are. That committee is also scheduled to meet on the 16th next week. So more to kind of come from that, but wanted to be able to share a few updates. Hopefully each of you were in receipt of and enjoyed the newsletter that was released recently. We had a really great click ratio again on that. So it's nice to see that when you put something, when Rashonda and team put things together like that, people are actually reading it. So thank you. At least you're clicking on it and it's opening. The blog content also continues to grow. So if you are not familiar, most of our newsletter articles do reference the blog, but you can also access it from our website. If you go to planrva.org, click on the resources tab, that drop down at the very bottom, there's a button for blog, and you can see all the articles that get published. So we've got a lot of great content on there that's summarizing the work that's happening. And we'll try to push that out to you guys probably in a more regular way, maybe as just a link on the agenda or something. Did want to just reference, we've had a lot of activity going on. The fall has been very busy post-COVID, and lots of things going on. So we've had our Shared Values and Action Summit on September 30th with the Chamber and Community Foundation. I know we're going to hear more about that later this morning. We hosted our Better Together webinar with Six Wheels Consulting. And we also were kind of a lead lead partner on the recent RVA Engage event on civic action series in housing and really featuring the work that Homeward, our partners there, and Partnership for Housing Affordability are leading in the region. Chet Parsons was a presenter this past month at the AMPO conference, the American Association for MPOs, and was there to present on scenario planning. And it's just really exciting to get the feedback from colleagues across the country about how well he did. So that was really great to see. Phil Riggin was at the Valentine last week, presenting as part of the Controversy History series on focusing on transportation. So it was nice also to get that invitation. And Katie Moody, Rashonda Lanier Jackson, myself, and Mr. Davis attended the NATO annual conference in Pittsburgh, and were able to stand on the step and repeat and get our photos taken for the NATO Impact Awards. And Rashonda and Katie were able to do a lot of networking at the Impact Awards reception with colleagues and share about our program awards. So kind of exciting things happening there. We, as I said, do have a committee meeting scheduled for the 16th. I think actually we're going to try to host it at the Current so that we can offer a walkthrough for those members to see the site, but we're going to be talking about some of the new things that we want to roll out in the coming calendar year in conjunction with our move. The committee is going to be pretty busy talking about our logo refresh, putting together some more comprehensive collateral sets, thinking about what our targeted engagement activities will be with each of our localities and how we can really make sure that we are present in your communities, and not only do our commissioners understand the value of being a part of the commission, but the staff members in your jurisdictions can participate in that as well. I think the committee is also going to be talking about in future meetings website refresh and the potential for some video productions. I think Hanover County hosted the CVTA last night, and Mr. Thornton, the video that CVTA has is, I think, been an inspiring piece. And so we, of course, want to be able to have something like that to talk to convey as well. And then finally, I'll say that we have, as a staff, asked that the Public Outreach and Engagement Committee consider, and I think that Mr. Davey is very interested in willing to do this, in hosting a first look event in January in lieu of the regular business that we would have at January's meeting. We would host an event where you would be able to do a trial run, if you will, for coming to the space at the meeting time, be able to walk through. And the hope would be that we would be able to invite all of the vendors and vendors and firms that helped us get this space underway, so we could talk about why things are the way that they are there. So Mr. Spoonhauer, that was a lot.
Right.
Sorry. Okay. Then I think that concludes that report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, ma'am. And I'll give a little bit of an update on some other things after we do the executive director's report. But as it relates to NATO, I think it's important for folks to hear some of the great things that took place up there as well. So do you want to go into executive director's report at this point?
Sure. Just wanted to share that we continue to do our outreach with our small and rural jurisdictions for the pilot program. We've had a couple of project requests, which has been exciting. So we're working to figure out what we can undertake with staff resources this fiscal year, and then how we might be able to program some of those requests into next fiscal year. So please do stay tuned on that. I did want to make an announcement that we were notified earlier, I guess it was late last week, from the Virginia Department of Emergency Management, that the grant awards for the State Homeland Security Grant Program were awarded $385,000 to the commission for various projects. I think there were 6 or 7. So Mr. Holland, that'll be coming to the committee from a budget amendment. We did not budget for these dollars last spring. So we're very excited about that. The majority of those funds actually go toward pass-through projects that are directed by the Emergency Management Alliance. So it goes to activities related to regional CERT training, public outreach and engagement for the Plan Safe initiative, training and exercise for emergency managers, and the purchase of supplies and various equipment that's needed to support mass care and the stand-up of emergency shelters in the event of a disaster. So we're really pleased about that. It's the largest award set of awards that we've received to date. And Katie was telling me earlier this week that she was getting calls from PDCs and localities from across the Commonwealth asking, how did you get so many awards? So it's kind of exciting to see. Her grant writing skills are just phenomenal, and it's great to see those coming through. Let's see. I will just also then close out by saying that we did achieve our Title VI compliance review. Closeout of that, we received the closeout letter from Virginia Department of Transportation about a week or so ago, and that's a closeout from the 2021 TPO certification review, but that was finally completed. All concerns have been addressed, and we've been cleared, so to speak, of any programmatic issues. So pleased to be able to be moving forward with that. And I'm really proud to say that our team has come up with a very innovative program. We're partnering with the Virginia Association of MPOs to host a Title VI compliance training program for planning district commissions and VAMPO MPO staff from across the Commonwealth. So Rashonda's been managing that project and working with Chet Parsons to be able to deliver this program. So not only will our staff be able to meet the training requirements, but we've been able to parlay that out across the state, and we're just really excited about that.
Thank you, ma'am. And before we get into item number 4, I just want to give an update. We had a number of things that we've been involved in throughout the region. We did do a habitat dedication. PlanRVA was there, Mr. Spoonhauer. It was in Goochland, great Goochland County. And so we traveled for quite some time to get there. But-
As I did this morning.
As you did this morning, that's right. We talked to Dr. Newbell about that. Okay. But it was fantastic, and Rashonda was with us, I believe. So anyway, there she is. I'm sorry. So Rashonda was there, myself, Mr. Spoonhauer, Miss Heater, and for anybody, I've sat on the board for Hanover Habitat. If anybody have any familiarization with Habitat for Humanity? Yeah, it really, it's just an amazing program. Quite often it's very misunderstood, but doing the dedications are phenomenal. So I was glad that our leadership team was able to be there. And I was glad that Rashonda was there representing with us in that team effort for PlanRVA. We did go to the NATO conference. PlanRVA was well represented there. Miss Heater had to get there a day early. And I'll go into that briefly a little bit later in this update. But Rashonda and Katie were both there. It seems like Rashonda is everywhere that PlanRVA is, which is great. So we appreciate her leadership. So some of our staff did have an opportunity to participate in, young and emerging leader type training and orientation. And Rashonda and Katie represented us very, very well there. And the feedback that we got from those two team members was that it was very, very beneficial. Miss Heater, we had a very, very busy schedule, so much so that Miss Heater picked me up at the airport. I think the only problem I had is Miss Heater absolutely refused to feed me the time to which I almost became petulant on the ride there. But it was so, the schedule was so packed. I told her, I said, your annual evaluation may be in jeopardy if you don't find me a chicken sandwich somewhere. But I want you to know this, and I say this in all seriousness. There's two things I think that we need to recognize going to the NATO conference. And Dr. Newbell, I know you've been there, so you can back this up. One, PlanRVA is highly regarded on a national level. And number two, Miss Heater is highly regarded amongst her peers there. With that, PlanRVA received 3 impact awards at this national conference. And you're talking about folks from all over the nation. And it was a jam-packed conference, but thanks to the leadership, certainly from Miss Heater, and to the commissioners, both past and present, to have 3 impact awards at a national conference is substantial. And there were many folks who came up to me talking about the impact that PlanRVA has had as a regional district commission and what we do. So we enjoy a very good reputation, and rightfully so. So I want folks to know that sometimes we get down here, we get into the minutia of things, and Dr. Newbell knows from attending. We have a substantial impact not only in our region, but we are recognized for the good work that all of you around these tables do. And certainly want to thank Miss Heater for her leadership, because again, she is well respected amongst her peers, and we appreciate that leadership. Keeps us in the forefront. So it was an interesting time up there. Again, very, very jam-packed. I believe the next, and this is an important meeting, the next one is the Legislative Washington meeting that'll be held in March. Is that right? And so we'll bring more information, but that's going to be jam-packed as well. That's going to be going to the Hill, talking about a number of different things. NATO does work in conjunction with VACO, works in connection in this area and works in connection with NATO on that, or NACO, I mean. So there's a lot of crossover. There's a lot of crossover, and I think it's important that we realize how integrally connected we are when it comes to some of these issues. So it's important for us to continue to stay engaged. So Ms. Heater and staff, Rashonda, I want to thank y'all for your leadership. And it was a wonderful conference. And, you know, we kind of get the accolades for the impact awards, but a lot of that work that we mandate at these tables has to be carried out and executed when these meetings are over. So we appreciate each of you for that. So and thank you for having me attend. I appreciate that, to my fellow commissioners. With that, if there's nothing else, yeah. Any comments before we move into our special presentation? Dr. Newbill, do you want to say anything? You've attended the NATO conference. Thank you, Dr. Newbill. With that, we'll move into item number 4, which is a special presentation on our shared values. Ms. Heater, or shared values in action. Ms. Heater is going to introduce us. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. I am just delighted to be able to have Sherry Armstrong and Brian Anderson with us this morning. And I was talking with them just before the meeting started and said, you know, I don't think in the 7 years that I've been at PlanRVA have we ever had a presentation or a guest speaker in the Community Foundation and the Chamber. So I thought to kick this presentation off, perhaps both of you might share a little bit about your organization. We have, the three of us have been working together quite a bit for the last couple of years and trying to think through the appropriate way that our organizations can collaborate, and particularly not just the three of us, but a whole set of organizations that think about the future of the region on a daily basis. And I'm just really glad to have you all here today and grateful for the support that you've shown to me and to our organization. We've had a lot of opportunities to partner on things and just really look forward to the future there. So
Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I'm going to kick it off by first welcoming you to the Community Foundation. I know some of you had to drive far, and we really appreciate that. But we always love to have folks in this building because truly the Community Foundation is the community. I mean, that's how we kind of look at our work. Just to give you a quick sense of who we are actually, our footprint is the same jurisdiction as the people in this room, and it actually goes into the Tri-Cities. So the Community Foundation, what we do is actually bring philanthropic dollars from donors and families and organizations from across the region and disperse that money into your communities, particularly with nonprofits that are helping to serve the people in your communities. So we're really proud of the fact we're able to do that. And just to give you a sense of that, probably on an annual basis, we have about $50 million going out of this organization to nonprofits and organizations. Most of that's local, some of that goes outside the area, but the majority of that is to support the needs in the region. So it's great to be here and great to be part of this effort. I am going to turn it over to Brian. He's going to kick off and tell a little bit about the chamber. But first, I just want to say it is so great to be in this meeting and to hear from you all about how much you feel about the impact of your entity and what you're doing. And I can't reiterate enough how much of a pleasure it's been working with Martha and her team through the years. She shows up in such a partnership spirit kind of way. And I think what you're going to hear from us today, and we have been sort of tied at the hip for a while now over the last couple of years, getting to know each other, learning the capacities of each organization, and really trying to figure out how can we leverage that and do more good for the people in our region. And that's what this is about today, and your partnership, and particularly Martha and her team's partnership, and being a good thought leader in this, but also just to be able to get some good work done that is really beneficial to the region. So I just want to say that and thank her in front of this group for that. I'm going to turn it over to Brian, and we're going to move it forward.
Thank you, Sherry. I can't talk with something in my hands. I need to be able to move a little bit. So thank you, Sherry, for that, your introduction, and for hosting us here today, and Martha for letting us be here. This is really a treat. As you said, we haven't done this in my 3 years of being here, and I still feel like I'm way behind after 18 months of working out of my basement. We felt we were told we were non-essentials, so we had to leave our offices for a while and work from home, but we're glad to be back and doing things like this. I'll also say, just being in this room as from the highlight of my professional career was being an elected official at the county level and serving on a board like this, the regional commission down in Georgia. Took great pride in bringing all of us together and working, and now seeing what you all do on a regular basis. Really proud to be in this region, see the kind of elected officials we have, the kind of chief administrative officer we have, people like Martha and professionals and her team. We really have a lot of really significant talent devoted to making this the best region in the country. And that's part of the reason why I'm here. And I also say that the serving as an elected official and being on a regional commission like this is probably why I'm in the chamber business now. I got tired of selling boxes of liquid, Coca-Cola and Budweiser, and really felt that serving people as you all do was a much better calling than just, again, going to work every day and trying to sell Coca-Cola and Meliella. So glad to be here this morning. We're going to walk you through a couple of things that we think are important to this conversation, this work, and really to get your buy-in or pushback if there's things that you think we're not on track as we get started. I say we, it's we, all of us. This is not a PlanRVA initiative, Chamber RVA initiative, and or Community Foundation. We're just the three that felt, since we do serve the same people, the same region, that we'd have a chance to bring the most people together early, and then we could say this is truly a regional effort that'll have multiple moving parts that can make things happen. Real quick then, for the chamber, we are a business organization. We serve the region that Martha and Sherry mentioned. We serve primarily the large employers with the most employees, not because we don't care about others. It's just we felt that's the place we could serve at the regional level best. We also partner with our local chambers, Chesterfield, Hanover, Powhatan, Goochland, to make sure that we can complement them and not compete with them. We work on government affairs, both federal, state, and local. We work with talent initiatives. We don't try to get into the networking type events that would compete with those local chambers. So we consider them our partners. We're very proud that we've got a lot of business horsepower on our board that cares about this region and wants to make sure we're doing our part to, again, complement the work that you all do. So this action framework for equitable growth is just one title. It's really because we keep, we don't want to look like we're prescribing anything. We want to make sure that we just have a title that works with the moment in time. It may change every month or the next few months as we really hone in on what this can look like as we go forward. Next. So coming out of, let me back up just a little bit, one other point. Thanks to Leonard Sledge and a few others, we began talking as sort of the nonprofit leaders, some government to some degree, economic development professionals, and probably a few others that didn't really fit a box. Back the first week that COVID hit, we started meeting every other day by phone to talk about what we need to do, one, to prepare each other on what was about to happen, but also to connect with each other, how we could serve in a time of a pandemic. That all helped us build relationships that hadn't been built before. It helped us think about the region a little more deeper than we probably had before that, and to begin to talk about things where there might be weaknesses or opportunities. And from that, we knew coming out of the pandemic that there is more we can do together on the business, government, and philanthropic legs of the stool to continue this conversation around regional growth and regional cooperation and collaboration. So this, this summary, if you will, just to put it in perspective, follows not just coming out of a COVID pandemic, But also, if you look at the last 2 intercity visits that our organization leads, but we're happy to be partnered with many in this room, including again, Martha and Sherry, that those trips are not to be just, and I understand about eating. If I don't eat in 2 hours, I get a little fidgety. It's not just to be eating and to have fun, which we do a lot of that as well, but to make sure you have some time as leaders over a dinner or in a session that you can spend more than just 5 minutes talking about an issue. So from those trips and looking at what happened in 2020, again, both the pandemic and the social unrest of the summer of 20, all of those things sort of led us that we needed to talk about the region a little bit differently. We have a lot to celebrate, but if you really think about this region, everybody in it, every citizen may not say it's the region that they are flourishing in or that they're getting all the opportunities. And we heard from Dr. Shetty on 9:30, a Harvard economist, with data that everybody's not sharing in that. So until we can say everybody's got a path to prosperity, there's work to be done. There's certainly inequities in education, health, and life expectancy. We also saw that there are others out there that we can compare against who are doing this work. The 3 pillars of this model is to be mainly to be data-driven, have a vision we all share in, and then also be solution-oriented through the action framework. And then lastly, how do we as a region advance equitable growth as we go forward? It can't be that we just bring in a big economic development project, 1,000 people get hired that would have been hired any other place, but that everybody's got a new chance at opportunity. Next. I'll go faster as we go. So as we look at the region, we have a lot to celebrate. We've seen the headlines, and some of this data that we're going to show you in a few minutes is dated because anything that happened yesterday or further back is not current, but we've got the data that we have. I don't think the data that we'll show this morning reflects a whole lot that's happened in the last 6 to 12 months, which is really positive news. But the question is simply good enough? Or is good the enemy of great? So all of this, I can tell you from a business standpoint, talking to many of my business leaders, some of the business leaders feel that they as a community, the business community, have been complacent at times. They've not felt the urgency to lean into some of the things we're going to talk about. So that's not speaking to you all, but it certainly speaks to us as a region. If we can't show that we are looking at the data compared to our regions, other regions, peer regions, and then we've got plans to elevate those trends. Next. So if you look at the data, our region is not growing as fast as our peer regions. And again, doesn't reflect the last 6 months, or last 12 months. I'm not exactly sure when we cut off was, but all the typical data we try to look at like this is usually through the Census Bureau and other federal government information. The census type information is typically 12 months in arrears, but that's at least a starting point. Next. So we just picked a few, including 2 that we took an intercity trip to in the last 18 months, Charlotte and Columbus, Ohio. We put some others up there that will either be considered just slightly bigger than we are or slightly behind us. But you can see those numbers, and we can certainly send this to you, all of you, that show that from a job growth standpoint, we are lagging at least these regions we chose. So we're at 0.5%. Again, this is not factoring in Lego or Plenty or the Diamond District. None of those are in this data. So I'm not sure if that's going to bump us another 2 percentage points to 0.2% or 0.5%, but at least through this particular sets of data, the forecast is for us to be at 0.5% annually, where again, you can see Raleigh at the top at 1.6%. Next. We're also lagging in other measurements that we'll show you real quickly. So gross metropolitan product, again, going back at least 12 months ago, we were trailing Raleigh, Charlotte, Atlanta, and Columbus. Our trend's positive. So the question is for us to decide what is our North Star. What would we say is success? We want to be midpoint to those. I can tell you, I've lived in Georgia a long time. I have no desire to be Atlanta. I don't want us to come anywhere close to being Atlanta. And I'm not being negative to Atlanta, but their growth has outpaced their infrastructure. Forget going 10 miles like we need to get to Goochland or Powhatan. Try going 3 miles and taking an hour and a half. I went through Knoxville on Friday and Sunday getting to see my children. Don't ever want to go back to Knoxville if I can prevent it. So my point is we are on a good path right now. We've got great infrastructure from water availability to great road systems, great schools. Where would we want to be on that if we could pick that? I don't think we want to be necessarily at the bottom, but we may say that's the North Star, the rate, or the pace of change we want. But let's at least have that conversation. Next. And then 4 more breaks down the data, simply job performance, output for productivity. You can look at standard of living. Again, on all of those, we've got a positive trend line, but does trail other parts of the country. And we need to decide what would be our designated target. Next.
That's where I go.
Yep.
Yeah. So just a couple of other things we want to focus on. We'll go a little faster on this because I do think it'd be good for you to see the slides that we're looking at. But, you know, there is this whole notion around business and economic growth that Brian talked about, and that really kind of lifts up the region in a big way. This national conversation around growing disparities, particularly among children and families, it's emerging more in the region. And I think, you know, post-COVID, post everything we've acknowledged and learned as a region, we do know that there are families falling behind and it's going to be hard for people to catch up. And so this is sort of the context of that data. Go ahead, next slide. So the opportunity insights, which this is just a snapshot. When Brian referred to Dr. Chetty, who came to the area, he was able to really kind of dig into some maps and show us where our challenges and where our opportunities are. If we have this notion that we want to be a region where there's opportunity for all, and that's sort of in the all as much as we can, and trying to figure out where that has not happened and where it can be more intentional. This is just some data that shows sort of how we stack up. Next slide. I think this slide sort of sums it up, and you all are in this, we're all in this, hearing sort of some things, you know, our 4th and 8th grade Black students in the region are underperforming. This starts to pull out where we see the disparity and where we have an opportunity to build the right kind of systems and solutions to actually move. It's more about mobility. Like, how do we give more people the opportunity for economic wealth building, economic mobility? And that's kind of the focus that we're trying to lean into on that. But there's just some other data points we've been looking at. Next slide. So what this has led us to move to, and what we want to present to you today, Brian teed it up, is this idea that many regions across the community or across the country have these community-wide visions and implementation frameworks by which they organize, align, where it makes sense to align. But really, I think at the end of the day, with a North Star that we can all lean into. Some of you may have been part of the Capital Region Collaborative several years ago. It was sort of how do we lift up pillars of things we want to measure and look at. What I think is different about this process we're proposing is that it's not just to measure where we are, it's to actually align and be able to talk about strategically the work we're doing against these things we're trying to measure and whether we're showing improvement, and ultimately that we have a North Star. The North Star is equitable growth, and we have a vision and aligned vision for how we're doing that. The thing I would say before we jump into this, you all are doing all of this in your jurisdictions. I mean, you have plans for your residents. You've lifted this work up. This is not work that starts a whole new process. It's trying to figure out meeting organizations, entities, jurisdictions where they are, so we can all be more knowledgeable and connected on the things that we're trying to improve together. So I just want to kind of say that it's not to create new initiatives, or it's sometimes we may have to do that, but it's really to give us a place to understand where we're doing well, where we might have gaps, and where there are opportunities to create new initiatives to actually move forward in a different way. So next slide. So, you know, the way we think about this is shared vision and an action framework. I mentioned there's benefits of a regional vision, benefits of an action framework. And I think where we are today as a region is we're all sort of thinking about this more in a common way than we have before. So how do we sort of galvanize around that? And so, for example, if I'm in a community foundation and there are $40 million going out of my organization on an annual basis, how do I best know where the greatest impact we can have, so I can help philanthropists determine where to put those monies, where to get that money to have the greatest gain? If there's alignment around affordable housing or alignment around early education, and each jurisdiction is trying to hit some targets with that, we can align resources better, and we can be a better partner to the work that public sector dollars are doing. So that's just the idea of that framework. And then I'll go next one. So this is an example. One of the things that we are looking at is the Greater Washington Partnership is the entity. Baltimore, Washington, Richmond, business community's been part of this, but they actually worked with McKinsey and did this blueprint for economic inclusion. And this is blurry. I'll show you. Go to the next one. But what we're trying to think about, can we model a framework similar to that based on the work we're already doing in the region, trying to get alignment around the kind of data and the work we really want to align towards, and actually build out, sort of lift up these pillars that then we can showcase what are the jurisdictions doing in this work, where is their collective action across the region, and then how do we measure that success? So this is sort of just a straw man kind of idea about what that looks like, but we want to build that process. Next slide. Sample, very important. This is a sample because we haven't figured all this out. Just real quickly, you know, we have a planning process we're trying to follow. We're trying to bring in a lot more partners. I will say, I think Martha, Brian, and I have been trying to steer the ship on this to figure out the best way to do this. But this just gives you sort of an idea of how we think about the planning process will go. And I'll get quickly to the last couple slides so we can have a discussion with you. And this is kind of the time frame we're looking at. We think this type of a process to get as much engagement as we can, to know where people need to sort of tell us we need to push back or we need to go forward, that this is a year-long process and it has a lot of dimensions to it. You know, this idea of, you all are one of the meetings we want to see, you know, is there buy-in, or do you think this is a good idea to move forward, and how would PlanRVA or the elected leaders want to be involved? As we move forward, there's infrastructure to develop, communications. One of the things I think we aspire to is we have a way that we can tell all the great stories of all the good work that's going on in the region, whether it's in the jurisdictions, it's with some of our nonprofits. So part of this is, how do we tout and talk about that? And then how do we inform when we know we have things we need to work on? The vision framework process that we're going to be working on, there's community-wide engagement at some point we want to do, like we want to be able to stand up. These could be some things that stand up within the straw man or within the framework. And then we're going to do broad community engagement to get input to that as we go forward, and maybe leverage where community engagement is already happening, not to duplicate or not. You all do a lot of community engagement. So it's going to be important to know how you do that, when you do that, and can we be a partner with that? So this is an idea of a time frame. And then the last slide for me, these are sort of how we're envisioning or how we've been working. We do have a core planning team. That's kind of the group up there. We have representation from Federal Reserve Bank, Greater Richmond Partnership, and Richmond Realtors Association, SIR, which is a big research planning firm in the region, and then West Cary Group, Moses Foster has been part of this group. We have planning partners we want to reach out to, local governments, CAOs, plus the DCAOs. And for example, we're meeting with some of the four Richmond, Henrico, Chesterfield, and Hanover DCAOs in a bit, because they meet and work on things together. And we really want to kind of meet with them and talk this through, see if they could partner. And then just to say what this represents, this isn't just our organizations. We want this to be a community-wide effort, and we want people and institutions to feel a part of it. And so this is just to demonstrate that. So the last slide, and Martha, this is kind of your role, if you want to hit on that, or you want me to hit on that, the role of PlanRVA.
So one of the things that Chairman Davis and I talked about when we bring speakers forward, we want to be sort of clear. I mean, this board, while it's great to have people come in and be informative, and I think we know that you as members enjoy this place to be able to connect with each other. We want to make sure that this doesn't turn into like a speakers bureau. And so I think he challenged me to make sure that this year, as we bring special programs to you, we really try to connect it back to what's the work of PlanRVA. And so I think in this initiative, one of the things that we've been talking about a lot is how PlanRVA can support this this action framework from a data perspective. When we developed our strategic plan in 2019, one of the core elements of that was building PlanRVA as a regional resource when it comes to data, best practices, policy. And so how can we really start to be able to exercise that muscle as part of this process? I think that many of the data elements that would be contemplated as part of a regional framework, if it's modeled after what Greater Washington Partnership has done, or similar frameworks from around the country, are data points that PlanRVA already touches. And so how could we leverage that capacity and really be able to bring it to the forefront? We do a ton of data collection, analysis, and interpretation. As you know, oftentimes it's through the lens of transportation planning, emergency management, or dealing with environmental issues. But many of those demographic and economic factors can play a role in some of the other priority areas that might be identified here. So I think that, really, this is an opportunity for PlanRVA to do what it already excels at well, not reinvent that wheel, and to be able to contribute and align with this effort in that way. But I think also there's a big opportunity to be able to leverage the resources that exist within local government. I know there's a citizen satisfaction survey happening right now in Goochland County. So, being able to tap into and kind of take advantage of that kind of pulse information of what's the sentiment of the resident in the counties. Many of your jurisdictions do those kinds of outreach things. Chesterfield County has this unique community plan. I know New Kent has been doing strategic planning now for several years. So, I mean, each of you have these different priorities and feedback loop with your residents. And I think we're really trying to figure out, how do we tap into that, and how could this effort align with and support the things that you are trying to do in your communities? And Sherry, I think you just so aptly said, how can, whether it's philanthropy or the business sector, the private sector really kind of get behind what the public sector is identified as the things that need to be done in the community to make it as great as possible for your residents.
I just would reiterate, this is not a supplanting anything you all do, because you do a phenomenal job with your individual jurisdictions. The question is, how can we connect those a little better? I mean, we have had SIR already look at many of your business plans or strategic plans that you've done for the counties and jurisdictions, so we can use those to cross-reference. But find those points where we may have a little bit of a weakness of not the region come together better. Charlotte's a good example where the city council said they wanted to make a down payment on affordable housing. A couple of years ago, the city council passed a measure to get $75 million and then challenged the business community to match it. And they did that. So I think that's sort of how the leverage can happen, where not only do we take the great work you all are doing, the many things you are funding, but then go get other resources, the philanthropic dollars and business capital dollars that can be used to help these.
Yeah, I would just add to just the other thing. It's been fascinating. Like if you look at the regional Go Virginia and some of those things, I mean, I think, where can you leverage at scale, right? And it really doesn't matter where it sits. It's how can we put more dollars where we need to be. And I would reiterate what Brian was saying. I mean, I think the value of the makeup of our region is we have a lot of leaders across the region. So how do we leverage that in a way? And how can we be better supporting you and what you're doing and supporting your citizens? So this really is in the spirit of collective action and cooperation where it makes sense to do that. Sometimes it doesn't, because every jurisdiction, the residents have different needs and you have to kind of focus in on that. But back to our footprint, if we're a broad-based organization, we can be helpful in starting to steer resources to support that. So this is really all in the spirit of, can we align around trying to even make this region even better? Because it's great. We have a lot of good things, and it's just, how do we sustain that for our next generation of people, and how do they contribute to that over the long run? So Martha,
Questions?
you want?
Hi, thanks for that presentation. I do have a couple of questions and then maybe a statement or two. First, the data source, is that just Richmond City?
No.
Or is that the Richmond region? So that's amazing from an education point of view, that we went from having a huge deficit of Black graduates and white graduates to just 10% now. Like, that's a huge growth. I really feel like, because I know when I first started, there's a major debt, like it was like 50% versus 10% now. The reading scores, even though it's still not where we want it to be, that used to be an 80% deficit just 10 years ago. So that, I don't know, it just tells me, even though we want to make it higher, which we should, we want to get it to where it's equal or better. But it was just interesting to see. And so I just wanted to point that out, because I feel like a lot of times the word Richmond gets thrown up there and they get all the brunt from everything. Like, Richmond gets blamed for everything that's wrong and no credit for anything that's right. And I just wanted to make sure that this is good. Like, it's much better. And those rates reflect the community saying that we value that education. So I don't know, I'm kind of sensitive to the issue, but I did find that interesting. And second, when we look at the city Orlando, or we look at the city Atlanta, we forget that they're also supported by very rural communities.
Right.
So that's why I was asking, is it just that city? So it's the whole region, because there's in Georgia, there's Pauline, there's Troy, and in Orlando, there's all kinds of very rural areas, even in Florida. And so it's the whole region is what, okay.
The
that makes sense
MSA
to me.
level, but to your point, I think we
Yeah.
would be disingenuous. We didn't take as much of the data and disaggregate it down to the jurisdiction level.
Right.
So if you look at Dr. Shetty's information, he drilled, all of his charts are down to the zip code within the region. So we've got all that information that, again, we can share. One of the things I think is important to say, we have no intention, I say we, just the three of us, but I don't think anybody wants to ever put a county versus a city, no comparing, contrasting
Yeah.
publicly. This is for us to enjoy and talk about, but you've got data you can share. There's things we can get through other sources, but how do we look at it down to as low a level as possible and then make decisions?
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that's the value of having PlanRVA at the table with us, because I think whatever this ends up being, whatever this framework is and whatever the data sets we're going to use, it has to be holistic and more comprehensive. And so that's part of the process we have to go through to kind of really say, this is what the data is, this is the data we're using, and here's how this plays out. But I mean, the key is we have a lot of data. I think it's really trying to then, to Brian's point, be able to hone in on where do we have challenges that maybe we all need to kind of work on together. And to your point around where things are evolving and growing, I agree with you. I think we've made progress along a lot of those indicators, even we were looking at 10 years ago, right? So we need to start there and say, where have we gotten to and what's our opportunity going forward?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think we absolutely have to move forward with a vision, North Star, a direction. To be otherwise, I think it'd be derelict to not do that, because we have to look at, and I think, and we have about 9 jurisdictions, or what have you, 1.2 million people in this area. What we have to do is look at it not from a standpoint of how many more dollars we can throw at, but what can we strategically focus on with respect to, for example, 4th grade, 8th grade. Because if we don't deal with that educational disparity, it continues, such as the status quo. What's not acceptable is a status quo, because we know what that does regional. It just bleeds into different aspects. So I think we absolutely have to do that. In fact, my thought process, even before this presentation today, is we need to have good data, do a data reset as to where we are, but more importantly, where can we go and how can we best get there? How do we solve the problems of missing links, the weaknesses? How do we build a chain so that all the chain is strengthened with the weak links in the chain? Because if we don't deal with that, we'll end up with less than what we can be as a region. And I think educational is a critical part, job development, job growth, skill training. Many of us are on several committees that meet, but I think we absolutely have to do better than what we're doing. And I've always believed and always known it's not about the amount of money you put in, it's how you spend that money that makes the difference. Just look at the data set. I don't have all the data in front of me, but I've historically looked at a lot of data over the last 20 years in this region with respect to, and according to the citizen sections survey, you're absolutely right. We do that every 2 to 3 years in Chesterfield. And we meet with citizens, constituencies. I met last night with a group and we had a presentation from a police captain. Safety comes up as one of the highest needs of the community. And we know that. That's why we invest in it appropriately and have what I say, as I said last night to this constituency, I think we have one of the best police departments in the country and one of the best chiefs in the country, as was said last night to those citizens. So I just want to throw that out and let you know, but I absolutely think if we want to do better, we have to do better, but we have to be prepared and committed to deal with it and face it appropriately. Thank you for the opportunity to get my little 2 cents.
Mr. Hollow made a good point about return on investment. I can tell you in the business community, there's a serious conversation or earnest conversation about how we give to a lot of different organizations that we need to start seeing some return on investment from those investments. If there's 8 groups targeting X initiative, are they getting the return? Or maybe 4 doing a great job and can demonstrate the success. Maybe they get all the money. So scale is important. Return on investment is important. Y'all do that every day. We want to make sure other organizations and entities are doing the same thing. Question.
Well, I wanted to say thank you both. There's a lot more to come from this. As I mentioned earlier to the executive committee, we are going to be talking with the board next month at the December meeting about kind of our data capacity to share with the board a little bit more about some of the work that we're doing and unpacking some of the data sets that we have and how we're starting to partner with other regional organizations. It's a little bit more of an inward look to our capacity and resources, but we wanted to be able to illuminate that for you in the context of this morning's discussion. I think that there's a lot more to come on this, and I hope we'll be working with the chair and the executive committee and also with both of you to be able to bring regular updates and I think a feedback loop. Maybe what I will say is I think that the request or the invitation, however you want to receive that, to have conversations in your jurisdiction about this framework and where you really see the most opportunity or mileage would be welcomed. And I think whether that's through your administrator or through a committee structure, I mean, I think we can be flexible with how that looks in each of your jurisdictions. So feel free to let me know that, or Brian or Sherry, and we would love to be able to set up those times to really kind of walk through what this could look like. Sherry mentioned, I think that there are already some conversations scheduled with lead staff in some of the localities, and we're really interested in being able to figure out how to make this work for each jurisdiction.
The last thing I would say, I think you all can be helpful with this is I really think this process and this work we do needs to be reflective of the diversity of our community. And we need more voices, more people, even people that that are emerging leaders in your jurisdiction that we could talk to and bring into the loop. We don't want this to be heavy institution. I think it kind of has to start that way because in the end of the day, we all have to get aligned around our work a little bit and our resources, but this is a real opportunity, I think, to begin to identify emerging leaders, younger leaders across our region, and give them a chance to be part of something to bring the solutions to the future that we're looking for. So think about that and think about who we can tap into in different groups that you have that we can start to engage and get some energy and some excitement around the way we could move better together going forward. So thank you.
Thank you all for your service.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. But first, thank you for the meeting space. But moreover, both of these organizations have been key players with a number of folks around this table, with everybody around this table, really. And we've been able to find resources and collaboration. We kind of throw that word around, but your leadership is certainly appreciated. There's a lot going on. And both of these organizations have the ability to help us bring different, more diverse groups to the table. It's interesting, we've got Goops and you got Hanover and you got City of Richmond. And so there's diversity just in localities with that. So thank y'all both for not only the presentation, for hosting, but for all the work that you've done in the past and what we look forward to in the future. We're very grateful.
Thank you all for your time.
Okay. So before we get to item 5, briefly, and we are ahead of schedule. I apologize. I stepped out twice. Once was to take a phone call relevant to this, and then Vice Chairman Byerly and I just had a quick pull up. Mr. Gregory, we did not have a meeting, I can assure you. So we do want to just, it's one of those things we're kind of trying to figure out, how do we float this out there? We don't want to put a lot of chum in the water to create a feeding frenzy. But we do think, because of the nature of the folks and the policy setters around this table, that we do need to let folks know. We are aware some comments came out the other day from the governor working on some issues that certainly need to be worked on as it relates to affordable housing. The governor certainly has an initiative for that. He's been vocal about that. But some comments came out about inefficient local governments, inefficient and overburdensome local governments as it pertains to what some folks have seen to have a direct corollary to local planning authority, i.e. leaving local planning authority in the hands of those who are best suited to handle that. And that is the people who were chosen to be policy setters by the people in their localities. So there is a concern. I know that there's a large lobbying group behind some of these initiatives. We don't exactly know what the General Assembly is going to take up. I just received a phone call from Senator McDougal, so I apologize for any interruption. I'm going to talk to him a little bit later. He obviously represents areas of Hanover. I think it's going to be bipartisan. A number of years ago, we had proffer legislation that came through the General Assembly, and many of us remember that. And then to their credit, I think it was 2 years later, they rolled that proffer legislation back, but it took a lot of control out of the hands of local government. They saw the error of their ways down in the General Assembly. So the comments that came from the governor, I don't have them in context, whatever that might mean, but I certainly read them through a press release. Hanover County is going through a comprehensive plan review. We haven't had anybody show up from some of the lobbying organizations that may be behind the potential legislation speak to us. So there is a concern that, lobbying 140 people in the General Assembly could be easier than traveling around to all of the local governments in Virginia. But having state legislation that could hinder localities' ability to plan in their communities is concerning. We want you to know we're aware of that. While we don't necessarily have a lobbying component here, we are sitting at a planning district commission meeting. And so I'll be in contact with a number of legislators. I will not be speaking directly on behalf of PlanRVA because we don't know what to speak on necessarily, certainly with Vice Chairman Byerly and our executive director. But we want you to know we are aware of that. We're not quite sure what it means, but right now I think it does have us concerned. We'd certainly like to have more information on what some of those comments may mean, where they were directed. I don't think anybody wants inefficient government, but without any contact from Richmond to hear that there may be some overburdensome and inefficient governments, and then there could be state legislation and statute put in place as it relates to local planning matters, certainly is a concern. And we want you to know that we are aware. We were just made aware and that we will gather more information, and certainly welcome any comments, phone calls, emails, any pull-up meetings that any commissioners like to have as it relates to their localities. I'm happy to meet at any time. So thank you for that. Hearing nothing else, the time is 10:11. Anything from commission members? I'm going to go to Mr. Thornton first. Mr. Waddell will let you close out. Mr. Thornton, thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, word in the spirit of inspiration, aspiration, and that's related to the presentation that was given to us. I want to applaud the two of you for having shown that this morning. There's a French expression, if you will indulge me. It goes like this: "Comme on fait son lit, on se couche." That means as you make your bed, so will you lie in it. And I'm going to use that to say that Commissioner Peterson and I were talking about something before we began, and he was talking about how collegial we are as a group. So I'm thinking that as we kind of work with that framework that was presented to us, we have some of the best commissioners around here, and I've been around for some time, and I didn't see as much collegiality in the past as I see today. So that means we have a framework to work with ourselves. Each commissioner on here has done an extraordinary job. And so I just want to say that in that spirit, Mr. Chairman, that I think we are poised to do some of those things that the framework mentioned. And I personally would like to have a copy of that, because some of that data was very interesting, as one of our commissioners say, and sometimes data does remain the same, it changes. But I want to thank you for that, and just mention again that this, members of this board, these commissioners, we have laid the foundation. So we just need to work harder and get more people to the table to understand what it is we're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for those comments. Certainly agreed. Mr. Waddell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of comments off the top of my head. First off, to all the veterans, thank you for your service and your inspiration, excuse me, to me. To your points on the planning legislation that may be undertaken, I've worked on 2 comp plans, a downtown master plan and a transit-oriented core plan in a small town, and I'm working on the comp plan here. Every planning is different. Every municipality is different. One size does not fit all. And the best people that would know their community needs, live in the community, and have contacts. So bring that back to the lobbyist that we want control, we want to exercise, we know our communities. Again, one size does not fit all. And a suggestion on the overall vision that was presented here today. It's a long-term thing. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, and a suggestion to see how it starts. Locally, we've got in our community nonprofits and community service boards that have programs to rectify the problems. Those successes, if they could bring to the legislative body and let us know in the communities, and that can share that with y'all, those successes could build on a greater success. And to Mr. Thornton's comments, I enjoy working with these folks, very educated. I learn every time, very collegial. And if I may use a French term, voulez le bon temps rouler, let the good times roll.
And Dr. Newbill.
You sure?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I need you.
Thank you, Ms. Page. I want to say thank you to both of you in terms of the presentation from Brian and Sherry. I think that is an incredible opportunity, and it will be a missed opportunity if we do not figure out how to work together towards that end. It is not should we, is when do we get started? What's that pathway forward for us to start being thoughtful and intentional about the various questions that were posed there? We have the potential, I think, to have even greater impact. I think this very example, I've often thought that this body could, when we get to the General Assembly timeframe, and we've never taken that I'm aware of a legislative agenda, if you will, from this body. And it doesn't have to be everything, but there are certainly things we're going to agree to, and we're much stronger in making that case together than we are individually. And so whether it's legislation or housing or economic development, we have some already examples. There's the Richmond Henrico Health District where we've started to work together. I mean, there are other areas that and other projects that we've started to work together on that we are able to have greater impact for the region. And so I want to say thank you, and I look forward to the opportunity to work towards this regional vision and plan. So.
Okay. Got it. All right. Thank you, Dr. Newbill. We'll go to Mr. Peterson, and then Ms. O'Bannon. We will recognize you after Mr. Peterson concludes his comments. We know you're online. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want, while we're talking about working cooperatively, I just want to bring everybody's attention. Many of us in this room are going to be involved with VACO, which is actually meeting here in the street. And BML, I'm sure, is going to be part of it as co-partners with VACO. But this is a good opportunity for all of us to sit there and work cooperatively for these things that we need for our jurisdictions, and bring VACO on board as also supporting our positions. And it is a good place for us to bring those positions forward and get buy-in from other partners throughout the state. I encourage everybody who is going to be involved to get involved more than just going to it. Go to the steering committees, have your voices heard, have our voices heard. Because what we're bringing to it is going to be our joint voices.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Ms. O'Bannon, yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry I was unable to join you until the last presentation. I was at a YMCA breakfast. And one of the issues we talked about mirrors what we've been talking about today. I do want to make mention of one thing though, when Dr. Newbill said she does not recall that we've been down to the General Assembly. We have on various occasions for various topics, and we often could not come to a conclusion of exactly what we needed or wanted. And Mr. Peterson's comment goes to really the heart of that we seem to do better individually using the same message, but tailoring it to our jurisdiction. And eventually the General Assembly does respond to that because they know who their constituents are. So it's almost better for us to individually approach an issue. I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Newbill.
I just want to clarify. I did not indicate or mean to indicate that we've not gone together, but that is different than having a legislative agenda that this body endorses and takes forth. So Ms. Bannon is correct. We've gone on individual, but that's not what I'm suggesting that we might please entertain in the future.
Yeah, and that's exactly how I received your comments, that we haven't had a ratified or codified legislative agenda. No, that's how I received your comments as well, ma'am. And that may be something that we want to consider. I know localities oftentimes will go separately, or commissioners will go down there in their capacity as council members or commissioners and their localities or supervisors. But again, something like this that just came up is going to have an impact on everybody. And I do know, Mr. Thornton, that Henrico County has seen those comments. And I know that is a topic of discussion. And I believe that I'm certainly not speaking for Henrico County, but I have heard that y'all have extended a cordial invitation to the Home Builders Association to meet with you. So I'd like to be a fly on the wall. Strike that last comment. And then lastly, I just want to say, Chairman Carroll came as a guest in his official capacity as chairman of CVTA and gave a great presentation, very informative presentation with Mr. Parsons, who did a phenomenal job. And I can't tell you the impact that I believe that had. Interestingly enough, a guest from another locality in a regional board finished his presentation in front of the Hanover citizenry and received an ovation. So we were a little hurt. Not often does a board receive ovations, and certainly to have a supervisor from another locality to receive an ovation, we all walked away a little saddened last night. But that said, the presentation was good because it was accurate, it was impactful, and it was relevant. And Mr. Chairman, I know you have a substantial number of duties back on the home front, certainly in the region as chair of the CVTA, and to travel to another locality in the evening and spend some time with us explaining the importance of what your team is working on meant a great deal, and obviously had a substantial impact and was well received. So thank you, sir, for joining us last night. If there's nothing further, Ms. Firestone, it's 10:22. This meeting is adjourned.